Tuesday's terrorist attacks. Where do we go now? Joining us to talk about what we're going to do, New Jersey Congressman Robert Andrews, a member of the House Armed Services Committee. So, Mr. Andrews, all of us are wondering what the president and his Council of War are planning, and we're wondering how this might shape up. Is it fair to say it's going to look a lot like the Gulf War, or do you think it's going to be very different?
It will be very different. I think you're going to see this proceed in three stages. The first is a specific effort to identify and hunt down and either apprehend or destroy the individuals and groups that were specifically responsible for Tuesday. The second phase is to cut off the resources of those groups, their money, their arms, their telecommunications. That takes a lot of time. And then the third step is to identify the nation states, John, the countries that are providing safe harbors for these groups, and to make them change their behavior, starting with diplomatic and economic efforts to do that, and if necessary, following up with military efforts. So this is not like the Gulf War, where there was a nation-state enemy in Iraq.
Well, let me ask you, number three, which is to go after the nation states, would I be wrong in assuming that perhaps that would move up to number two? That in addition to going after those people who are specifically responsible for Tuesday, we might compile a list of nations where we know, or we have learned, or we can prove that the government and the heads of government are involved in terrorism, and we would move against them directly.
I think in order to do number one, you have to do the third at the same time, which is to get involved with some nation states. And I don't want to speculate as to which ones, but I think it'll become pretty obvious pretty soon. I'm not suggesting that these three things will happen sequentially. They may happen at the same time, but they're different kinds of missions.
Mr. Andrews, what about, I mean, to put things absolutely bluntly, is the chore before the United States presently to finish what we didn't finish in the Gulf War?
Yes. I see no scenario for stamping out terrorism that does not remove Saddam Hussein from the leadership of Iraq.
Does that mean going downtown Baghdad?
I will leave to the intelligence and military leadership the most effective way to accomplish that. And I'm not saying, John, that there's evidence that Saddam was directly involved in Tuesday. He may not have been, he may have been. But I see no world that is free of terrorism, or that has reduced terrorism, that has Saddam Hussein in it.
What about others? At this point, do we still assume that the mullahs of Tehran are involved in these kinds of actions against us?
I think that's a very fair assumption.
What about the younger Assad in Syria?
I don't know the answer to that. And frankly, if I did, it wouldn't be appropriate to discuss it publicly. But I will tell you that certainly questions of Syrian conduct are being actively looked at by the intelligence and military communities.
What about the various stands? The Uzbekistans, Kazakhstans, Turkmenistans, all of those former Soviet republics that have seemed so unstable and have caused Russia problems, and perhaps are causing us problems.
There are very few nation states I would rule out from close examination in that area of the world. This is an international network, John, of killers that will go wherever they find oxygen and welcome. And I think it's well within the realm of believability that each of the states that you just made mention of could be involved in this. President Bush today prepared the country for a protracted war on terrorism. He is correct to do so. This will not be a 4-month enterprise with yellow ribbons and victory parades. This is going to take a long time to get all the weeds out of this garden. I'm not suggesting that that means that we have to wait a long time to make the first strike. And I think it's crucial that we make a first strike quickly in order to show the world that this is not just more political rhetoric from the United States. But I want to caution our viewers that dealing with the bin Laden problem is not solving the overall problem. He is a piece of the overall problem.
Congressman, that is, okay, we have discussed, at least I was trying to discuss, sort of uniform military activity. Then there's this other stuff, what you might call a dirty warfare, using spies, using assassins. Are we ready to get back in that business?
We should be. I noticed that the people who blew up the World Trade Towers didn't play by any ground rules on Tuesday. And I think for us to delve into some politically correct definition of what should and should not be done would be a tragic mistake. We need to do whatever we need to do to remove these killers from our path.
Okay. Now, people like you and others have said this for some time. What's it going to take to remove what I guess we'll just call generally the church restrictions on our use of spies? And what's it going to take for the president to actually sign a piece of paper that rescinds the executive order forbidding assassinations? What are the actual obstacles that stand in the way that would put the United States back into that business?
Well, I think most of these could be undone by executive order, and I would encourage President Bush to do so. It's not necessarily public executive orders because of the sensitive nature of some of these things, John. These could be executive orders done as national security directives that are private.
They could have been done already.
I'm not going to comment on that. There perhaps are some statutory provisions that the Congress needs to undo. I'm not specifically aware of them, but I would support undoing them. Look, there were no ground rules on Tuesday. When you hijack an airplane that has children that are 2 months old aboard and hundreds of innocent people, and you use the airplane as a weapon of mass destruction and you kill thousands of innocent people, for America to tie its own hands with ground rules would be stupid. And we're just not going to do that anymore.
All right. Congressman Robert Andrews, a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us. And we will talk to you later about all those things, and we'll expect good news. Thanks again.
I would pray and hope that we have it, John.